It's good to meet you, Ken. Thank you
Hi.
for doing this.
Yeah, sure.
I um I was just listening to the original vinyl release. This is the WWA 002 release. I don't
Yep.
know.
That's what it is.
That's the same what you have.
That's what I
Uh,
got.
so I spent a little bit of time, probably about half an hour, listening to this and then listening to the brand new. This is the
hmm
clear vinyl, and I heard somebody say that the low end is it might sound a little different than the black vinyl, but I don't know how true that is.
What's peculiar is after placed an order with the distributor for the clear vinyl, I
Hmm.
discovered that there is a black vinyl, and the black vinyl version is is somehow affiliated with Madfish, which is Snapper.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't understand if they had different catalog numbers, if some reason Snapper was involved in this, if they're doing the distribution for it. I don't know. But for the hell of it, before all this started and before I got my copies to sell,
Hmm.
I ordered one black vinyl for myself simply because black vinyl always sounds best. So um, it's just the truth. Black vinyl
Yeah.
always sounds best.
Why is that?
I can't give you a good answer, but I'll tell you where you can get a good answer. I'm working with a pressing plant called Gotta Groove Records. They're out of Cleveland, and they are phenomenal pressing plant. The quality is one of the best in the world. And if you go to their website, GOTTA Gotta Groove Records.com, they have a whole discourse on color vinyl. And they actually will rank, they will tell you, they will rank sound wise the best versus the worst, and black black is the best, and I've always heard that. And having manufactured vinyl a number of times, I've seen it more than once on a website by the pressing plant where they tell you black is the best.
Hmm.
It has
Interesting.
it has nothing to do with the color. It has to do with the PVC
Right.
that's involved. So it has different melting points and apparently different sound characteristics. So
All right.
yeah. So when given a choice, my customers, they love colored vinyl, and but given a choice, for me personally, I will always take black if given a chance.
Awesome. All right. So brief intro. We have Ken Golden here. Ken, are you the CEO and founder and owner of Laser's Edge
Guilty.
Records? Okay.
Yes. So it started for me in 1988, and I actually 88. Yeah, 80. Yeah, I got married 87. I didn't have a CD player. All these rare albums that I coveted were coming out on CD out of Japan. Italian prog albums, really rare Italian prog albums. And so I started buying CDs. I didn't even have a CD player. I'm a crazy audiophile. CD whole thing of CDs was pretty new. I said, "That's bullshit. I don't want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. You want the vinyl." And then after a while, I started accumulating all these CDs, and I said, "This is getting kind of ridiculous. I might as well buy a CD player." So I bought a CD player, and the CDs took up about this much space on a bookcase. And I said, "They sound okay. They sounded right." And then I said to my wife, I said, "I think there's a business here. There's got to be other schmucks like me that can't afford the original vinyl, and but they want the music, and it'll be good enough." And so I kicked around the idea, and then I said, "All right, I'm going to do this." And then I started uh, selling Goldmine magazine, uh, which I don't know if Goldmine exists anymore, but it was a record collector. It was a like a weekly, I think it was weekly, uh, record collector magazine, and I think in some form it may still exist. I'm not sure. And
Interesting.
they were classified ads. I used to run a little classified ad, and then I was showing this. I Back in the day, we did catalogs. So this was my old logo. This was one of my first catalogs. And then we got fancier over the years. We did it for many years. This is pre-internet, right? we did printed catalog, nicely printed catalogs. I used to write all these descriptions, and
Oh my goodness!
I
Wow.
did basically a review of everything. I have a stack of them different. It was crazy. It was crazy. And then the whole, it became a business. It became, instead of it feeding my perverse hobby, I said, gee, I think there's like a real business here. And I was an accountant. I worked in Manhattan for 18 years, and towards the end, I was basically doing two full-time jobs. And then I moved down to South Jersey, and I was commuting into Manhattan. It was hell. And then finally, my company got sold, and my boss said, "Stick around." And because he always told me from the day one, he said, "The last person to turn off the lights is the accountant." So I stuck around, and I got a nice severance package, and I invested it in my Laser's Edge business, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's great. Yeah, so I knew we were connected on Facebook. I don't remember how. However, I've watched your videos on Sea of Tranquility for a long time, the Professor's
Yeah,
Picks, and then you've had your own channel. So you just show up in my feed, and honestly, in the last
can't get
several
rid of me,
months,
man.
I've watched every single one. I'm like, maybe my CD will make it, So and it's fine that
I'm
it
like,
it hasn't. It's just that I've been watching a lot of you, and then I didn't. You said you put up a post on Facebook about I want to make a video about the new Gentle Giant in a Glass House
mhm,
vinyl, and so I thought let's have a discussion about this. And one
sure.
of your friends, Bruno Sampa, I think his name is,
Well, he's a
uh,
Facebook friend. Yeah,
sure, called into question my impartiality, which is fine because my channel is not about criticism, and I'm not like I'm here to help artists sell and
sure,
shine a light on what they do. But that doesn't mean I don't have opinions. Generally, people don't ask me for my opinions. So I thought we could just have a real conversation about,
sure.
the new vinyl versus the original vinyl. And I
Yeah,
know you haven't listened to the
I
digital
haven't.
copy yet, but I've listened to the CD and raw, 24-bit files as well as Atmos several times, and I have a lot of ideas and thoughts of where this conversation could
Well,
go.
we're
But
gonna have to we're gonna have to talk about that.
yeah, you kick it off. Tell us your thoughts. Start with
Well,
you.
well, let Well, here's the thing. So I'm a crazy audiophile. I have a very high end system and in a dedicated room that I built, and so I've always been very fond of the original. In fact, I always thought this was a great sounding album. So I was really kind of surprised by this whole thing to hear Derek say that him and the band they were never happy with it, never happy with the mix. I remember back in the day, Frank Doris, who used to do the setup for Harry Pearson from the Absolute Sound, he used to use "In a Glass House" as one of his reference discs to setting up system when Harry would get some new equipment into to review for the magazine. So it was kind of a shock to hear him say that to hear Derek say that he didn't like it and that the band didn't like it and they wanted to remix the album. That in itself I thought was okay, to each his own. What what I Here's what I will say up front is this new version, I don't hate it, but it does sound very different from the original, at least in terms of the vinyl. I can't comment on the CD, but I have some thoughts about the CD without even hearing it. The They used AI technology, right? This Brazilian engineer extracted somehow. I don't understand the technology
Well,
too
we
much.
we actually did a whole interview with
Right,
the engineer, and it's a feature built into Logic Pro, and it
right,
uses machine learning to extract the frequencies associated with instruments and pulls things apart. But it doesn't get new information to fill in the gaps, so you can hear
right.
artifacts from that separation process. But yeah, it's an artificial intelligence or machine learning process, but no AI was used beyond the pulling apart of the audio. Just to make that clear, because I know there's a
Right.
lot of
Okay,
emotions
I
about
understand.
it.
Right. So, what we get with this new version, well, let's talk about the old version. The old version to me sounds wonderful. It sounds like analog. It's the sound of analog. It sounded what 1970? Is that 1976? 19 earlier 1973? I don't even remember what 73. It's 1973 analog. And it was recorded at Advision, which, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the best studios in the UK. I don't have any issue with the sound. It's very warm. It has that analog warmth that we all kind of, well, some old old folk like me grew up with and used to. The new version, I feel kind of stupid holding up the same album cover. This version has a modern sound to it.
Yeah.
Clearly, what they've done is they uh, they goosed the bass a little bit. Here,
Uh-huh.
Ray's got a little more, and John maybe is a little louder. What they definitely did was they pulled the vocals up. They put
Mm.
in the mix
Hmm.
because, particularly like in parts of like the Runaway, um, Derek is a little far back in the mix. But here's part of the difference on this original. When you look on this original,
Yeah.
there's a lot of layering. Okay, there's a lot of front to back layering, and there is a lot of compression on this new version,
Yes.
and you don't get that, and you don't quite get that separation. Um, Bruno, again, who I don't know, he just was, you know. Here's what I know about Bruno. I know he takes these albums or live recordings and things like that, and he EQs them and he plays with them. He puts them up on YouTube and he posts them, and he seems to really be into this stuff, and that's fine. So he had commented about, and he gave some background, I think, based on your interview.
Yeah.
So the here's where I have an issue with the whole thing. What's most peculiar is that they had, or at one point they had, the original analog stereo master tape.
Right.
In 2009, I think it was, Fred Kevorkian, the mastering engineer, converted it. He transferred it to 2496, 24-bit technology, 96 kilohertz, right? Derek didn't want to use either of those for reasons unknown. So, at least, did Derek ever explain why?
He didn't explain much. He just said he gave Eber the CD, and Eber said it was the Alucard release that Fred Kevorkian had remastered, and that he thought that was the best sounding one, and so we would start with that. So the
But
the original vinyl is a very different starting point in terms of the stem separation or track separation than this remix as well. So they did
well,
not go back to the original. They went to a modernish remaster that was digitized
which
from the stereo.
which is peculiar,
Yep.
honestly. And I defer. Derek. Derek is probably a much smarter man than me, you know. And but you can't. Well, the multi tracks don't exist.
Right.
You can't do better than the original analog master in this case. That's that's the best. The next best that they had the opportunity to work with was the 2496 transfer. They could have done a 32 192 transfer, right?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
something along those lines. And they could have done a DSD transfer. There's a lot of things they could have done from the original tape,
Right.
but they didn't. They went they Their starting point was an already EQ'd 16-bit C compact disc.
That's right.
So the baby's already been thrown out with the bathwater, so to speak. So that's the best it could possibly sound, in my idea. So this whole thing about, and maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot because I sold a lot of the CD Blu-ray, but the Blu-ray has got to be bullshit because he can create a synthetic 5.1 surround. That's fine. You can't create a 24-bit stream from a 16-bit stream. It just
I
there's
will.
no information there.
There is information, but it is not from the original stem separation. It is what is added after, and the
Well,
24-bit, the plugins that were added, and then the resulting sound of that, taking 16-bit information and blowing it through 24-bit audio session with plugins. I agree with you. But to say that there's no additional information, probably not true, but minimal at best, I would say.
you're a musician. I'm not a
Hmm.
musician. You tell me what actually can be added if it
Mostly effects, like affected audio.
reverb or what have you.
Yes,
Yeah.
affected
So
audio, but not the
yeah,
source audio. Correct.
no content, no real content.
Right.
Not something that will take you sonically closer to the original source.
Correct.
So to me, I don't really see the advantage of a high resolution version of something that's limited to 16-bit. Doesn't mean the 16-bit can't sound great. And and sure, you can do all these things, and you can use the AI to essentially, you're in a sense, you're kind of EQing. You're doing further EQing. So you're not, you can't create something out of nothing. So, can you synthesize a 5.1? I Apparently you can,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I know a lot of these master tapes for albums are lost, and I know Steven Taylor's done it. I guess Steven Wilson may have to. It, it can be
Well,
done.
I'll just add. Derek did say at an interview panel that I hosted at the Moon June Festival that
Mhm.
Steven was very impressed with the surround mix and said, I don't know how he did that. And after hearing the stereo mix, Steven wanted to do the Atmos mix, but Derek felt it was unfair for Eber, who has an Atmos studio, to only do the stereo and not also have the opportunity to do the
Right.
Atmos. However, I'm not saying Steven Wilson endorses this product. However, according to Derek, Steven Wilson was very impressed with the result. So I'll just leave it at that.
I
But I
I
want to
just
add to what you said, though,
yeah, yeah,
because I have four main criticisms. One, yes, much more compression, especially on the kick and the snare. Uh, Number two, it does not sound like an album from the 70s anymore.
right. It's
Even with
very
the source material, as it was mixed and remastered and all that, it no longer sounds like the album from the 70s.
right.
It's just mixed with a different sensibility, and even the snare sound, it is not the snare sound that we all know and love from the original. It's a new, refreshed, augmented sound. Not
Right,
augmented
right,
by additional sound, but just it sounds like a modern drum kit, not a 1970s drum kit. And drum technology has changed a lot. Now, I'm not saying this is bad, but it is certainly different. And if you love the original, the original mix, and you're thinking this might be more like Steven Wilson's, like, I take classic albums and make them sound, fresher, newer, whatever. If you think it's going to be like a minor change, no, it's not a cleanup job. It is definitely like a revamp. It almost sounds like Ian Beabout and I did the interview with Eber, and Ian was thinking, did he use triggers? Like, did he use sound replacement on any of the
right.
instruments because they sound modern? And so for people who don't want Gentle Giant or their classic albums to sound new and modern, I do believe that group of people is not going to like this remix. But
Well,
I do
as I said,
want one quick other point.
yeah,
I
yeah.
do think Inmates Lullaby and A Reunion, the tracks without drums, got the biggest improvement, and I those are the two mixes where I think really stand out, um, as I prefer them because they don't sound new. They just sound like a breath of fresh air compared to the originals in my taste. But I completely understand and sympathize where people are with the other tracks that are more rockin'.
Oh yeah, listen, like I said, I don't hate this new one. You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, we we get a lot more views if we said we did. In the because hate always sells. But I don't hate it. But it's like a modern interpretation of the original.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm not I'm not like fanatical. Like I have like Stephen Wilson's work, but the King Crimson catalog. Uh, I think it's great. I think it did a wonderful job with it. I think the best version of Aqualung that you could buy on vinyl is Stephen Wilson's remix.
Mm,
So, I'm not like, one of these guys where like, oh, it has to be the original. If it
right.
sounds better, it sounds better.
Right.
This it doesn't sound to me, this doesn't sound better. This just sounds different. This sounds more modern. It sounds more like a contemporary a reinterpretation of what I think was a great sort of classic sounding album.
Now, what are your thoughts on the? Some people have commented on this, and I agree. It's less dynamic. Like the dynamic
Yes.
range is reduced. Do you like there are fewer quiet moments? The quiet moments are louder, and the noise, the lowest peak points of each song are no longer
Mhm.
as low. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree, and that's part and parcel of the compression. So, you're gonna it's going by its nature, it's going to be less dynamic. It's squashed, compared to the original. So, I didn't go to the dynamic range database, which is out there where, did you ever see that thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't do any careful analysis. I'm going by my ears, and yeah, this is this is more like this is a little more like radio friendly,
It
so to
is.
speak.
And if you haven't listened to the CD and you don't want it to sound even more modern, stick with the
Right,
vinyl because the
right.
CD version, the digital is, I mean, the vinyl kind of removes some of the oomph, but the digital is like, like the kick is there, the snare is
Yeah,
there. It's
yeah.
it and the raised bass, if you want more of raised bass, it's right in your face. So it like they are, I think, even though they may be the same mix, just by nature of the vinyl versus a digital print, even though the vinyl comes from the digital, files, but like the vinyl of this album is to me much closer than the original to the original vinyl than the CD version, which sounds even more different and clear, crispy, digital, modern.
Well, maybe when if it's up on Kobos or something like that, I'll stream it into my system and I'll give it a listen. I don't know if I'm going to crack open a CD, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you young folk out there, you might like this version better. It may be more along the lines of what you're used to listening to, and
And
it's one of the really great prog rock albums. Maybe the best Gentle Giant album. And if it gets more people to listen to it, all the better.
exactly. And Derek said he used to not like the album, and now it's his favorite Gentle Giant album. Now, Derek's a great marketer, a great salesperson. So, like, you know, take that with a grain of healthy salt. However, Andy Edwards, do you know him?
I know, Andy.
Okay, so Andy made a video saying these remixes and box sets are the detritus and junk of the future, and I get that. I actually wrote him an email with a whole set of counterpoints, but in my mind, the that's exactly the way I look at it. It is a bridge that allows In a Glass House to show up in my teenagers' Spotify feeds.
Mhm.
And if they see a new album that looks cool and they hear, the cracking glass right away. It's like, oh, this is interesting. And maybe they've
Right.
heard about Gentle Giant because they're being sampled by Questlove and Kanye West and, Jay-Z and all these other hip hop artists. Maybe actually, I was listening to The Power and the Glory, and my son said, "Why are you listening to Travis Scott?" And I was like, "No, Travis Scott sampled this."
I'll be Sam.
But
Oh, that's fun.
but like I think it's good to have a modern, fresh take, and I think it's good for artists if they want to change things, do it, and it gives us an opportunity to maybe pitch in a few bucks because they made this stuff 50 years ago, and not everyone is Derek Schulman in the band. However, that doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean you have to endorse it. And I just think more Gentle Giant in the world, just like the Zappa hologram tour and a lot of other things, like more experiments in the world from these bands that we love while they're still alive. It's pretty good. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, no. Hey, listen, I'm happy to make it available, and if I make a few bucks off it, cool. No problem. So, like I
So
said,
how
I don't hate it. I'm, for my personal preference, and my friend who was with me last night listening, and I've already gotten feedback from customers who have the original vinyl. Their preferences for the original,
yeah.
but reading comments on forums and on Facebook and what have you, people are freaking out over the CD. They love it. They think it's incredible. So more power to them, man.
Yeah, and not gonna, cast aspersions on old folk, as you said, young folk, right? You were around when the albums were around. Actually, that's how I started the Derek Schulman panel. How many of you, this was in Italy, how many of you bought these albums when they were new or were old enough to? And a lot of people raised their hands. And then I said, how many of you bought these albums and you were born after the band, disbanded? And a lot of hands went up, and they were very excited for this release. And I think for younger listeners, they might hear the original and go, sounds kind of flat, sounds kind of dead. And, you know, we do have different sensibilities, us, the younger people and the older people. But Derek seems very pleased, and the whole band seems very pleased. I got to interview everyone but Carrie, and I was stunned when John Weathers said, it sounds as it should, or as it always should have, or something like that. And
Well,
so,
I do have to question the rationale for not working from the original source material.
yeah, I didn't even think about that, honestly, but I agree with you. That's a good question to ask Derek or anyone. Why would you not have gone to the analog tape?
Yeah, and if it, let's say it's deteriorated, you have the 2496 transfer that Fred Kevorkian did.
That's right.
It's got
And
to be.
handing
It's
over
got
a
to be.
CD is going to be lower res than that.
Yes, and especially one that's been EQ'd. So yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
maybe
where do
maybe
fans,
somebody. Yeah.
where do they buy this album that you're not such a huge,
Well,
hugely excited
well,
about?
uh, well, excited to sell it. My website is lasercd.com, lasercd.com, and operators are standing by. And
And you're
yeah,
selling
no,
both the CD and the vinyl and the Blu-ray,
yeah.
right?
Well, actually, we're out of the Blu-ray, the CD Blu-ray edition at the moment. We have more on order. We have the CD in stock. We have the vinyl in stock, the clear vinyl. Yeah, and
Okay, I want to get your thoughts on this, the packaging, because we're all very familiar with the vinyl, but the
mhm,
CD is the actual, they made the inner, page, the
yeah.
package.
Well, it's pretty nice.
It is
You know,
nice. I just
I
felt
have.
this should have just been an insert. It felt like,
Uh,
oh, they changed it, but it's fine. I like it.
I have the Alucard um,
Yeah,
mini
the
LP
CD.
one, which is nice. Also, I have that CD. I think it's like GG02 or something like that.
Right.
Where
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they sort of replicate the glassine.
Mm-hmm.
Great album. I got to see General Giant. I saw them once. So
When?
I Palladium. It was 19. I don't remember if it was 77 or 78. My memory
Oh.
saying 77. It was the Missing Piece tour. So I'm at the Palladium in Manhattan. Dr. Feelgood opened up and got booed off the stage. They got pelted. They got, they got pelted with beer bottles, and yeah, and then when Giant came out, John Weathers made fun of Dr. Feelgood, and yeah,
As
so
not surprising.
and they were great. It was and yeah, and then I don't know if they came. I think they might have come around once after that,
Hmm.
but yeah, they were
Uh,
great, great
One other
recordings.
thing about this vinyl, I really like whatever material they used. It
Mm.
feels it feels really like a nice product. It doesn't feel cheap. So I
Oh no, no,
do
no.
I
They did a
like
nice
that.
job.
Yep.
It kind of approximates the original textured
Right.
cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a nice job. Yeah.
Well, Ken,
I-
thank you so much for having this discussion. I appreciate your critical eye and ear on all of this, and I hope that people buy from you at lasercd.com.
I hope so too. And we sell other things other than Gentle Giant. Look behind me. So that's not all Gentle Giant CDs.
That's crazy.
Uh,
And you're a label too, right? You have artists
I
that you
am.
represent. You're not just a reseller or distributor.
Correct. We started we I started out in 1990 doing reissues. I started out as a reissue label, and
Uh,
then uh, and then I started working with new bands, and then we kind of dropped the reissue thing many years ago. And people probably familiar with a lot of the bands that uh, that we discovered.
mm,
Riverside. We put the first Riverside album out.
cool.
And Haken. You're familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
Haken, right?
Yep. Yep.
We released the first two Haken albums.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we work. Yeah, a lot of quality bands, and we're still doing stuff. I got to have an album coming out October 2nd by this Dutch trio called Gates of Kiev. They are very influenced by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Atomic Rooster, bands like that, and
Yep.
yeah, all kinds of cool stuff coming out.
And one quick plug, you this morning emailed or messaged me about a band called Polymath, and they're awesome. So
Yeah,
if you're watching this far into this video, go check out the band Polymath. We'll definitely feature them on our next playlist video. Ken, thanks again
cool.
so much for your time and for
My
sharing your
pleasure.
thoughts with us. All right.